We're good. Okay. So welcome everybody. Workshop of the HLPC. Today's Thursday, February 9th. It's 6:35 p.m. and we are here to discuss the proposed form-based code that the city of Kingston is putting forward. And first and foremost, I want to look at the language for the Historic Landmarks Preservation Commission. As you're aware, under the requirements, the statutory requirements, the council referred this to the county planning board, the city planning board, and the Landmarks Preservation Commission. So you will be requested to make a formal recommendation. A lot of other groups and agencies have made them independently, but yours is actually a requirement of the code. So as you look at this, obviously I want you to focus on landmarks, but there are other areas that are attributable or you think reflect landmarks or have interest in landmarks activities. Certainly feel free to bring them up. I did send out, like I said earlier, I sent out the section of the code that is the new code. I sent you out how the existing zoning reads, so you can compare the two. They're very much alike in many respects. I also sent out the building styles, so you can look at the different building types. This form-based code is more aesthetic, more visual oriented. In shape and size. So there is a lot more in this code than we currently have, which allows us to kind of really address the visual impacts to the community as well. So I also lastly did send, because Mark had mentioned it at our regular meeting, that there's another section of the code, and it's not in our zoning code. But at the same time, that you're looking at code updating and consistencies, you may want to look at that section. It'll be a completely separate element or item for you, but I do know that at the same time that this is being done, there are other areas of the code that we are looking at to make sure, because they're going to have to all be brought up to speed or updated or be made consistent with what is being adopted here. So this is not the only section or the only issue, okay? I don't know if anybody, I can open it up to the floor. Mark, do you want copies of what we had sent out, or you have it on your laptop?
I would like it in hard copy so I can take notes.
Yeah.
I'll open it to the floor, or shall I give you my own comment on chapter 264?
Look, 264 is not the zoning code.
So I'll set that aside for now and accept commentary and questions from anyone on the commission.
Do you want me to read the comment that we made from the CAC?
Yes, would you? Yeah.
Okay, that covers some of this. Yeah, okay, the CAC, it's Conservation Advisory Council. I'm the secretary over there, and Emily Hauser and I were the lead people putting together comments, and it was like this. But what we're concerned with is only like this. So, okay. And there were multiple submissions from the CAC, but on historic preservation, we kept it sweet and short. Article 8L, section 40526, which is somewhere here. The present section in draft number 2, that's what we were commenting on. We're now on to draft 3 of the form-based code. Restates the existing sections 40556 through 40569, except for the couple of changes that Suzanne just mentioned. Yeah, we were into thoroughly. Well, the existing sections in the text have text specific to Kingston, such as the Old Dutch Church steeple height provision. That's in both 264 and 405, 58, 56. The text may benefit from a review of New York State Certified Local Government Model Law, CLG Model You can download that from your website. Ship out. And supplementing the existing text with text from this CLG document, such as including the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. You might want to look at putting some language to that, maybe.
I have a similar comment.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And regarding demolition and other hardship provisions in section 40566. And I didn't make any recommendations as to what they should do. I just threw the topic out there to see what Amy and Bartek could come back with. Please also make a recommendation concerning City Code Section 264. That's the one we just discussed. That's the Uptown District, which predates the section in the zoning. And the response from Amy and Bartek was revisions to the historic preservation standards should occur outside of the rezoning process to allow proper review and attention. They didn't touch it. Okay.
That's a deft sidestep.
Well, I mean, I think your thought about adding, incorporating Secretary of Interior criteria and standards is a good one. And I think that belongs in the zoning code.
Yeah.
We talk about criteria. We should, if we constantly refer back to that, as does the SHPO office when they're making their recommendations on different projects. So to me, that makes common sense. And I akin it to the fact that the county planning board, when they looked at this whole code, one of their early on comments was the referral process to the county should be in our code. So the same thing with the second, I mean, it's somewhat the same thing. While we know it's out there and it's a given, you have to abide by it. But having it in the code, I think just ties it all together, and it's in one place. So
Is it a reference to the code, or do we take the language from code out there and put it into this?
Well, two different questions you've asked for two different sets of regulations. One, the Interior Department regulations we would just reference because they're continually updated, and I wouldn't try and build in, and they're voluminous. The other is the referral to the county planning. That arises out of a separate section of law. I think it's general municipal law, but yeah.
It's in the 230.
Right, sounds right. And so
that's written in.
well, that's kind of written above this because it's state law as opposed to local law. So whether it gets included or not, the city
Well,
is
the county
subject
thing
to
is
it.
separate from our discussion.
Yeah.
That's in there. We actually did bring their suggested language in. So
Okay.
that's been brought into the draft.
All right, then,
Okay.
but I agree that we should make a reference to the interior standards as the guidelines we're following. I think that that's important for our consistency
Okay.
with what SHPO does, and just, you're gonna come up with answers to questions that'll be new to Kingston. So, who knows what will come up with fracking in the backyard. Small scale fracking projects. No one's done one yet. Maybe it will exist in 15 years and we won't have it in here, but we can turn to something like the interior standards that say you've got to hide it behind everything.
Yeah. I think our most important one is something that trips us up, I think, frequently, which is windows. And trying to have that discussion with applicants and making it clear, I feel like we deal with it on a case-by-case basis regardless. Not every structure is going to be dealt with the same. Whether it's a more recent structure versus an older structure, or whatever we deem to be more important than maybe another structure is. You could get just a single-family residence versus a very prominent structure in uptown or downtown that wants to put in new windows, new wood windows. Why can't we put in new wood windows? It's a replacement in kind. But not really. So how do we define that language? And I think using the Secretary of Interiors is helpful in that regard.
I would absolutely agree. The other thing about CLG, that certified local government requirements, does the city want to maintain ourselves as a CLG, in which case we really should? The reason I'm sitting here is because they need a lawyer when Marianne Mizell quit. God knows how long ago. And that was for CLG reasons. That was a
Well, I think,
requirement
yeah,
at
we
the time.
absolutely, I mean, we absolutely want to maintain our CLG eligibility. And I think that, you know, we can, and I mean, it is in here that, you know, yeah, the makeup of the commission is provided for in this language in here.
Right, I noticed there wasn't an attorney requirement. I don't know if CLG has changed or we have changed.
I thought there was.
No, licensed practicing artist, architect, and one member owner of designated building or owner of the historic district.
So if CLG hasn't changed in 25 years, we should add lawyer back in.
Okay, so let's start with that section. I mean, it says, I mean, there are 7 members, so you can just add in that one member, you can add another line in there that,
And one member, attorney licensed to practice in the state of New York.
As generic lawyer, or do you want to specify? Forgive me, Mark, I don't know what type of law you practice.
Mine is a general practice. My focuses are real estate and immigration.
Do we want to stipulate that it's somebody who's familiar with, you know,
I was a
land
city
use or something
planner
like
before
that?
I went to law school,
So-
that's why I'm here.
Yeah,
But,
it's just a question, I'm not.
It's an interesting one. I can tell you that the person who served before me, her specialty was family law and wound up being a judge.
Okay.
So I think
for purposes of putting it in a code, you'd want to just leave it as generic as possible, but certainly then, you know, if you left or were, you know, leaving the commission in searching for someone to fill that position, we would look for somebody with some land use or preservation, you know, experience
At
or
least
background. I mean, you're not gonna, you know, but it could be, you could put yourself in a position where you won't find another individual
Sure.
that's gonna fit that exact criteria.
That same thing could be said of my job as well.
Correct, yeah. Yeah.
Not all architects practices,
Right.
you know, historic preservation, mine happens to be, but.
right, and that makes you particularly valuable. But if, you know, I'm trying to think of the lawyers the architects we had before this. Some did, some didn't have a background in historic preservation.
Yeah, Alan Bear, he did.
He did. Before him, the guy who wouldn't leave. Oh my God, what was his name? He retired, he moved out of town, he wouldn't resign.
I don't know.
I'm trying to remember his name. I am blanking on
And
it.
maybe
Yeah. She's very. Let's see. Okay, so one member should be an attorney at law?
Well, should it? I mean, if
Well, whatever.
it's not in there now, and you, I know you're gonna be here for what, 20 more years? But if we have a difficult time finding an attorney, then what happens?
We might lose CLG status. Am I correct that it's?
I
still a
don't know
requirement
that
under
that
CLG?
is
I
true.
have something up, but I don't know if this, and I'm sure Kevin McAvoy will tell me if I'm looking at the right thing. Or Mark.
Can we
I
stipulate
think
because
because
it
it
only
was
Kevin?
For life.
Well, yeah, for life. For historic members, yeah.
Because I don't see attorney, but I don't know, I mean, does this look familiar to you?
Search that.
And I don't
No,
know
it-
if it has to be one of these positions, I mean, you could never find all of these.
No, I'll be perfectly honest, I think you're in the wrong spot, certified local government program.
I don't know if this is for the state program that they require this, or if this is for local.
Oh, this is not familiar to me.
Okay,
Um,
we could look into that.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Well, I know
I mean,
it will come up because you have tons of people waiting to get on this.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be my only concern is that
Yeah,
Well,
if you don't find one, you're.
Well, I just want to make sure we're looking to keep CLG, but that it's
I am.
clear to everybody in the city code and that we mirror those requirements for membership. I may be
yeah, I
locally
mean,
out of date.
I do the CLG annual reports and I, never, I've always just included the rosters, but you've always been there, so it's never come up as an issue, but I don't list you as an attorney
Right.
either. I list you as the chair. So you're not identified. She is. I list Andrea as an architect. Well, and that's only because our code says we need the architect, so I have to document that we have.
So if you
And
could
they've
check
never questioned it.
CLG requirements and just make a note that
Yeah.
we should track those. I mean, my recollection is ancient and could well have changed.
Just reading the CLG requirements and, we had Hayes.
Patrick, I'll send you this.
We used to have Hayes. It makes reference to state licensed real estate.
What I'm looking at.
Okay.
No kidding.
Real.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to
Check the
get one.
CLG.
No.
Well, I mean, Hayes was ours.
Oh, I know.
Hey, that's why I went, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
because there's no Hayes now, right?
They're easier to get.
Yes.
So you're looking at what section,
To
Kevin?
the extent possible, looking at the CLG.
Oh, to
law,
the
these
extent
may be
possible?
Yeah, these may be things you don't want to put in because it's just gonna trigger something else, right?
Right,
At least one historian. Well, Taylor is sort of ex officio.
yes,
A licensed real estate professional, at least one shall have demonstrated significant interest into the field of preservation. It's a lot goes on and expands on that. All members shall have a known interest in historic preservation and planning. Okay, that's an easy one. In the event the governing board determines that any of the positions described subsections above cannot be filled by persons so qualified, the governing board may fill any such position by appointing a person qualified under sections 4 or 5. So if you don't find them, you're good to go. it
Okay.
seems. Well, yeah, 4 and 5 are all members shall have an interest in historic preservation and planning.
right,
Yeah. And I have to get the definition of governing board, it's
well, that would be council.
common council. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
That'd be my
Okay.
guess.
All right, well, we'll
Yeah,
look
it
into
is.
it and
It
just
is.
double check it, but otherwise we'll leave it status quo,
Fair enough.
okay?
And it didn't mention attorneys.
You still have the title of chairman.
Okay, all right, I'll cling to that.
Doesn't this reference attorneys for
No,
No, doesn't?
No.
Okay. Kind of mistake.
It does
I remember when I was named, I was told it was because it was required by certified law.
Well,
That's long
that could be
ago.
the document that Kyla just showed us.
Right, it's not in there either, so I'm going to refer.
Kyla, that was the National Park Service document?
No, it was
Uh,
PRHP is what.
Yeah,
it
it's
is
for
on-
New York State,
It's on the ship outside?
I don't know.
parks.ny.gov.
But we'll look at that.
Yeah.
So then, just going forward, one of the, under powers and duties, I was looking at that section and under A, then the little two, it says to review all applications for building permits. I am proposing to change the word all. What we had hoped to do with the new code is to do more desk level review for some of the in-kind work that is going through. It just doesn't, in my opinion, I don't need to waste the commission's time or an applicant's, delay an applicant if they are looking to restore a porch, okay, and they're gonna use the same materials, same color, same design, no increased footprint, but they do need a building permit, okay, I don't think it should have to go before this commission. I think it's, it's logical that it would get approved, and if it meets code, I think it should, be able to do something, we should be able to do something at desk level. If something, I think we are looking at right now, streamlining processes, and that would fall right into that. So I am looking for some other language to put in there rather than it read to review all applications. So I'm gonna work on that and I'll get you what I'm gonna propose. But that's my reasoning there.
Is there an exemption for in-kind in this
No,
section?
there is not, but in the administrative portion of the code, it does allow for different types of reviews now, so things are gonna be coming more into the planning office. And at our level, we're gonna be making the determination as to what review process it follows. There's a minor review and a major review. Minor review is that more ministerial type review. Type 2 actions are all ministerial. They're not gonna go to like the full planning board site plan review. You're still gonna keep your authority within, historic districts. We'll still maintain that review authority there. But there'll be a lot less hopefully going to commissions so that things are more streamlined. If everything is following code and conforming with the code, then it doesn't necessarily have to be forwarded to a review agency.
All right, so the only textual change you see applying in here is the deletion of all.
That, yeah.
What about appeals and applications? I'm tempted that remain.
Where are you?
Same section.
Same section, next,
Yeah.
after the word and. Are you thinking of deleting both alls?
Keep the same. Yeah. Because
Okay,
which may affect anything. Yeah.
yeah, that would be my preference as well. So just the first. All right, so we have a concrete textural change on the table. Shall
Well-
we?
Well,
You-
no, this is just a workshop. We're
Okay.
not making any decisions tonight. These will all be put out in a written form and we'll adopt them at a regular meeting. It's just a workshop session,
Okay.
okay? In the next paragraph,
Before we jump to that, can I
Yeah.
make a comment on
Sure.
that? Actually, based on the language that you're talking about with, in-kind replacements, that kind of stuff. Something I've been contemplating, especially with regard to like paint colors, which we see a fair number of those. If somebody's not doing substantial work, if they just want to paint something, I don't know if any of the other commissioners feel the same way about this, but if a structure is proposing to use historic colors or, let's say like 2 or 3, do we really need to review something like that if they're already from a historic color line? Like if somebody's proposing something that's like, hot pink and dark gray, and they're not obviously of the historic colors, yes, I would like to review that. But if it's like a muted green and a muted gray from the historic color line, personally, I don't feel that that's a requirement of us, but
I would agree with you. I
Yeah.
would agree with you. And, in kind, in my opinion, would be like if it's similar in color, because you're not gonna get the exact color, that you might have, that might be on the building right now.
Yeah, some bleachers.
So if you're like in a green and you have a similar green, I would say that that's in kind, but I would agree with you on that level too, that if it's, if they're choosing from a color palette that is a historic color palette, and these are gonna be reviewed at a ministerial level too. And if we feel the need, we do have the ability to kick it up to a review. So if, we're looking at it, it might be a historic color palette, but I'm thinking maybe that's not the right
Right,
choice for
that's
this building.
Victorian and this is Edwardian.
Right, I mean, we might, maybe we'll kick it to the commission and say, hey, you weigh in on this.
Yeah,
Okay? We always have that ability, don't get me, it's not like we can't do that if we're not comfortable.
Yeah.
But I would agree that that would be a similar type of, decision.
I would love to put that under that heading as well. So, talking about colors.
What I'm seeing a bunch of is things that I used to consider as trim colors, especially dark colors, becoming the base color of buildings. And that's a real trend in the last 3 years. It's like paint the town black.
Yeah, I feel similarly to it. Some buildings it looks real good. And others I'm like, okay, this is getting a little old. So it is definitely a trend, and trends come and go. So that's why I feel like the historic color palette, it's tried and true. That's why they are the way that they are. And, if you're gonna go modern on an older structure, then yeah, I agree, it needs to be reviewed. So,
Okay.
So I would say we would send things that are painting stone or brick though,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That are
that's
not
a pretty
currently
material
painted.
change, yeah.
Right, so just even if they're historic colors, we would still,
But if you have a wooden house,
Right.
clapboard
you're
siding,
painting it, yes.
yeah, that needs to be maintained as a
Yes.
paint.
That's sending people that are painting.
Yeah, it's like, obviously, I'm of the mindset normally I would like to do what I want to do with a thing, as long as it's not egregious to the neighborhood, blend in, but at the same time, I'm not a hot pink fan, so, I'm gonna steer away from that potentially. But that's.
So you wouldn't paint a house like sneaker colors?
But did they light up? Is it?
Throw some really cool LED lights on it.
Okay, all right. Any other suggestions along those lines? I mean, obviously, this is a work in progress, so continue to think on these issues. And if there is anything, please get them to us so that we can try and get some wording together. So you're gonna be working on that as well, so if you're taking notes.
The other one, actually, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no, you go ahead. Mine is so big you, this would be ridiculous.
The other one, and I know we get an epic amount of these, are the signage ones, especially in Uptown. And go ahead and say what you want to say.
You're probably thinking the same thing we are.
The same thing, if they meet the current signage requirements per zoning code, I don't see the need to review it.
Yeah, have we ever rejected any release last year?
There was one applicant I could think of that had the correct square footage for signage, but there was some discussion actually from HAC about the content of the sign and the appearance of text, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, that is not something we should really be reviewing.
I think that was that the one on Broadway?
No, actually it was the firehouse.
Oh, right, okay, because the one on Broadway just.
What's the rejection?
It
We
wasn't
just talked through it,
It was more like, can we see something else with different fonts or something like that? And I don't really think that's something we have control over aesthetically.
Right.
The contents of a sign is not architectural, in my opinion. The sign and how drastically large it is and how big it sticks off of the building and all that kind of stuff, absolutely. But at the same time, do I want to see a glaring butt on a sign? No, I don't want to see that either. So, you know.
So how do you write that in? No.
No buts.
No buts, please. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Okay, so if it conforms, I mean, that was something Kyle and I were talking about earlier today, that we feel that if, if signage, that's one thing that comes quite frequently to you, but I mean, if it conforms to the code, then it should just be something done at desk level and then just pushed through to allow them to get their sign permit and move forward.
Hayes always did a fantastic job of asking you right off the bat, Sue, does this meet zoning code?
Mhm.
And if the answer was yes, then he would rubber stamp it. You know, I think he wanted to, and I tend to agree with him that.
Any other thoughts on that, or?
You should have seen what we used to do in this room with the signage
Oh, boy.
during the Cheney administration. Ellen would just put everything over there on a table, and we had no idea who was showing up. And we didn't know if the signs met the code. So we'd be actually measuring them, looking on the computer screen and extrapolating, well, what's the scale on this? And then trying to figure out what the real size of the sign is.
Yeah.
And then be going through the code to see if it would actually yeah. But that's why Hayes was asking that question. He didn't want to do
Excellent
that
question
before.
to ask, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
so-
then I would just add to that, you might want to review the sign section.
Okay,
Since you're willing to pass that on, we did not print
Yeah.
that section.
okay.
And I actually don't know, because I haven't reviewed the sign section that much, if there are different sign standards for the historic districts. I don't think so.
Not that I recall.
Well, there are for the Pike plans.
Yeah.
Right,
That-
I mean, in the
that's
in the
separate.
draft,
Oh,
in the current draft. So, and I actually don't recall seeing the pipe plan signage in the current.
It's not,
There's canopy signage, I think.
right,
So you might want to take a look at that.
yeah.
I think they're dropping out the really complicated stuff that we were looking at in the Broadway overlay.
Right, yes.
That
Right.
led to the font issue, like how many point type you had. I mean, there were a lot of issues.
Yeah.
there's new signage incorporated, like electronic signage, but it
Yeah,
specifically
yeah,
says
it's
it's
cleaned up.
prohibited in historic districts. So there's things in there that you won't,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be bothered with. So in that kind of case, if somebody did want to put an electrical or one of those new digital signs in a historic district, that would probably, well, there are exemptions like clocks, I think moving parts or some of them are exempt, but if it comes to that, they would be required to get waivers. So that might be something in a historic district, I would say you guys should look at.
Oh, there is that other issue that came up where somebody wanted to do neon in a window. And we looked it up and there is nothing that says you can't do neon.
Right.
Well, there is something against internal illumination of an outdoor sign. We had this fight with the old Kingston Tea Garden for years. There was, for a long time, exterior illumination is one thing, and a sign lit from the interior. And I don't know how that, if it was in the window, it wouldn't make a difference because it was an interior sign. But if it were hanging on the outside, perhaps we would want to say something about that.
Yeah, I think regardless, I mean, it wasn't, if somebody wanted to do a sign, and there's nothing that says they can't. If I remember,
Okay.
in
Right.
neon, in,
Yeah, no, you can't prohibit it.
So
it
if,
hasn't really come up, but
You can't or we don't.
wait, it's not in there, so you really can't.
We could.
yes,
No,
if you
that's-
want things in, yes, I would definitely consider what you want in. Or what signs you see that you,
Right, we have the Baptist Church on Boone Street that had the flashing notice sign that was a bone of contention that was sort of negotiated. You have to leave it on for at least, a week, and if you can't do flashing, you can't do changing. have a sign, services 10 a.m., fine.
We also had a situation with Yasuda when they first opened, they came to us, and that whole building does not comply with the Broadway overlay,
Sure.
the whole thing. So the question, the dilemma was, do we approve what they want to do, because it's consistent with what's else is in the building, and it looks fine? Or do we want to make them conform to the standards and then have them stick out like a sore thumb because everybody else is not, out of compliance?
Right.
So, yeah, we let them do what they wanted to do. But it's not it wasn't in the code to do that. We had to make a judgment call. But
Well, aesthetics allow that.
Yeah.
It is the eye of the beholder as best we can determine sometimes.
Yeah, canopy signs are in here, but they are really more for just canopies that you might see anywhere in the city, not the height plan standards. So that might be a comment for signage.
Yeah.
They brought in sandwich board signs, marquee signs, window signage is now in here at 25% of the window area. That was not in our code before, so there's some upgrades there.
How about those outside signs?
Sandwich board signs, they are in here.
Yeah.
There's a couple, I made a couple comments on them. They do have some restrictions, they're considered temporary sidewalk signs. They have size requirements no larger than 8 square feet per face and 4 feet in height. Quality design, materials, workmanship are required, permitted on the public sidewalk adjacent to the business. Have to be maintained. Need to provide clear sidewalk path of 5 feet. Limited to 1 per sidewalk per street level business frontage. And not be placed within 3 feet of adjacent property lines. So I added some comments that there's nothing in there about securing them. Quite often they blow over or into streets, which is a concern. I don't think that they should be up when the business is not operating. I think they should be taken down. When the business closes, they should be brought inside. And then I added a thing about insurance as well.
And what about clothing racks with clothing? That's in our town, it's all. Few
A lot of
stores.
them do that. Yeah.
Is there anything?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything in the zoning code about that.
It's like an onion, start at it and heal. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can show you quickly, the different, these are the different signage types that they talk about, but we did not print this section.
I just noticed this.
So see the canopy sign here is the only reference to a canopy sign, so I don't believe the plate plan signage is in here, so you might wanna.
No, I
If
think,
you want
yeah,
that to be carried forward, you might wanna.
I think it would be smart to bring it into this.
or take down the pipe,
Huh?
or take down the pipe.
Don't start that conversation.
Well, whichever one
Can you go back to that page?
Sure.
The last bullet of canopy signs, cabinet signs are not permitted on canopy signs. So are we doing signs on signs? On signs? On signs?
What is that?
I think they mean cabinet signs are not permitted on canopies.
I believe that is what they,
I think that's the intent.
What's
I
it called?
hope, yeah.
Like literally a cabinet. think it's kind of like the internally illuminated sort of thing, no?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Well, cabinet signs are not permitted on canopy signs.
I think it would just be canopies are not permitted on canopies. Because if you're doing, how would you put
On
a cabinet?
yeah, on canopy, right. on
Or cabinet
canopies.
signs are not a permitted canopy.
On
type.
canopies.
Yeah,
A type of, yeah, right. Either way, yes, that's sign on sign.
More layers.
Good catch.
It's those weird little things you catch and you're just looking at something.
Yeah, I still have one of those. I'm almost embarrassed. But here on section 8, subsection II, subsection 2, it should be cultural associations, plural,
where,
so as to agree.
where are you? Where you're at?
8
double I.
landmarks,
Okay.
8
So we're out of
A
signs.
double I 2, second line near the end. It just, I'm sorry, this stuff jumps out at me.
8A double 2,
2,
2. Okay, cultural associations.
yes.
Okay.
That's why we go to church.
Fine, yes.
How do you want to change that?
It should be architectural spaces and cultural associations, plural, of the past, so that it
There
grammatically agrees. Sorry to even bring it up, but there it
you
is.
go. No, okay.
Somebody's gotta do it.
Yeah.
So are we sort of just continuing on section by section as we?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back because I have a couple things. Yeah. Okay, so everybody look at the sign stuff and let us know if you want any other changes. We've got the note to add height plan, and we'll check that other language. And then we'll figure, we have to come up with some language on how to change that, one section so that we're not forwarding all of these things to you guys. In that next paragraph, bullet little phrase, the reference is to the standards set forth in section 40526L8. Now, that would be the way the reference in the current code, but look at L8. I don't know if it should be L8 or L9, review procedure where you've got your criteria.
Have some more thought about that.
And that might have always just been an error, that. Or should it be?
It's like there's contents of 8 that really should apply to 9, and probably 9 being the, I mean, it's called the review procedure.
Could be L8 and L9. Because I think the review procedure is the criteria you're gonna to review.
Yeah.
Reference, right? I mean, that to me is what makes sense.
Yeah.
Those are your standards.
And maybe it's in 8 or 9 is where we also reference meeting the Secretary of the Interior's.
That was gonna be a question of mine. Where and how do you think that should be inserted?
Probably in 9, under B criteria.
So add a 6 there, a V1. Kevin, your thought? We're on page 8.27. This, where this reference to Secretary of Interior standards,
I'm thinking maybe under D.
of 9, number 9,
Yes.
okay.
Either that or make it its own bullet.
Yeah,
as a first and foremost, say, you know,
Yeah.
we should review the Secretary of the Interior's preservation briefs. And then kind of go down from there. It's sort of a broad brush.
So make it
A
a
bullet.
separate E, so
Yeah.
make it E,
Yeah,
okay?
or I don't know how, this is where I'm sort of out of my field. If it makes sense to kind of shift everything down and introduce that before you talk about these other criteria. Like instead of criteria being B, make it C in every other thing. Do you see what
I
I'm
got
saying?
it, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I would urge that it go with the duty of the commission to exercise judgment. Because it's big, it's messy, we have to parse through it, rather than making it the first and foremost.
Okay. So you are,
I would put it either D or its own E, and if we're gonna make it something separate, if, parallel the language, it shall be the further duty of the commission to exercise judgment in accordance with the basis of the Secretary's Secretary of the Interior standards.
okay, so use that same opening,
Yeah,
all right, so let me see.
See what the language.
That might flow a little better now.
I think just our first duty is to our own code.
Hmm.
And where we're not sure what to do with it, then,
The other direction. Yeah.
Then the
Okay.
secretary, yeah, the certified CLG model law says will be guided by the Secretary of the Interior.
That's
It's
valid.
not binding,
Or
Right,
government,
right.
government,
Yeah.
it's guided,
okay.
yeah.
not governed.
So how would you word it then, with the guidance of the Secretary of Interior standards?
Standards for rehabilitation, and they go on with additional, which I don't know that we want to do that or not.
I think the secretary standards are the ones that are usually most applicable to what we're dealing with.
Right,
Yeah,
And then maybe include a link to where those preservation briefs are, so it's plain for people to go and pick it up.
okay,
Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So it's not just, what does that mean? Here's a link, go see it. This is how we're reviewing projects. When we're unsure, this is where it is. It's really easy to find. You just Google National Park Service preservation briefs.
There it is.
There it is. But I think that might be
So you're
worthwhile.
telling me I can finally throw out those binders in my basement?
Yeah.
for a while now.
I'm,
You're a lawyer.
yeah,
Hopefully you
Yeah.
don't have a dirt floor in your basement, because they're probably turning into mold.
no, it's solid. It's solid.
Okay. Okay, let me see, then I had a comment on page 8.25, it would be number 7F. It speaks to ratification through ordinance by the common council. I was going to talk to Matt about this. I don't know, we want it to be an ordinance, a resolution, a local law. There's different, they require different processes. And I think ordinance might be the wrong word to
Yeah,
use.
I think local law is what usually would govern
I
us
think
here.
ordinance got in here because when they adopted the zoning code, it was adopted as an ordinance, so they use ordinance to amend an ordinance. You can't use it.
yeah.
And I'm not the attorney, you are, that's why I wanted to talk to Matt about it.
Yeah,
If you adopt something by ordinance, you have to amend it by ordinance. If you adopt it by local law, you have to amend it by local law. If you adopt it by resolution, it can be amended by resolution. So I'm not sure if ordinance is the word here, or even if we need to throw that in, we can just say ratification by the council. I don't think the method has to be
It may
Fine.
tell us.
codified, that can be however the council needs to amend it, they amend it.
Yeah, he would know the history here and I don't.
Yeah, okay.
If
so
it's
that-
important, Matt should have to tell us.
Right, so that's, I don't think it's needed at all, that would be my opinion.
Could very well be right.
Okay. Less is more in this case. Okay. Those are really my comments, other than, just noting that the appeals section has been simplified, which I think makes sense. And, we also want to talk about demolition. There's been discussion that, this code may encourage or foster demolition of existing structures to open opportunity for new development and new construction. And that's something, obviously, I don't know that we want to really encourage, demolition of buildings. If you're talking, we were talking a little bit today with Bartek, Kyla and I, that, if you're talking Broadway now, Broadway is going to allow buildings potentially up to 8 stories in height. There are a lot of structures along the Broadway corridor that would never support adding an additional 4, 5, 6 stories on them. So would that encourage, by allowing that code, this code to come through, would that encourage people then to buy properties which are not protected by any historic status at this point, and allow them to be demolished for new development to be done? There is no check in here to do that, unless you're in a historic district. Any demolition, before demolition can take place in a historic district or on a property so designated, has to be referred to you. So we were just talking and we thought maybe if a property is eligible to be listed, maybe it should be referred before a demolition permit is issued. I don't know what your thoughts are on it. If you have, it's a concern.
Under what criteria? Individual or to be added to a district as a,
Well, eligible individual. I think you'd have to look at it individually because they're not all, not every property is adjacent to a historic district.
right?
I mean, there's always the emergency, language, but, that's not always gonna happen, so. It's just something to start thinking about, because that question has come up, from a couple different places, and it's something I feel I've kind of been toying with a fear of, I don't want to encourage, a lot of demolition of stock to make way for new construction. I mean, there's places where that's appropriate, but there are situations where I don't think it's appropriate.
Can we play that out real quick? I feel like we've not had to review, or I've not had to review a property that could potentially have a demolished structure on it. So how does that play out to us? I mean, we review it, but then we would say, no, it's historically significant. How do you tell that to a property owner, and then what do they do? That's why I want to play that out. I'm not entirely sure how that process works.
Yeah, well, right now, it's only when it's in a historic district, it's already got that
Sure.
level of,
That status.
identification.
Yeah.
And obviously people knowing that understand, I think, and are more sympathetic to it. When it's not a historic district, I think the lift is a little harder.
Yeah. You can get this scummy person who just wants to let their property fall into disrepair and
Yeah,
let me just demolish it and rebuild it, whatever. I feel like the same could be said in a historic district. I mean, I hope not.
right.
But, yeah, so that's why I'm asking, how does that play out? how do you prevent somebody from doing that? They just get slapped with a fine or something?
No, I don't, I mean, if they did it without
Well, if they,
getting, I mean,
how do you,
that's
how do you
what-
prevent some?
Neglect, basically.
No, yeah, I get that, right, but so how do you?
Stop somebody from doing that?
Yeah, right, if we determine that a property is significant, that it shouldn't be demolished, what happens then? I mean, you just tell somebody, no, you can't demolish it and that's it?
Well, I think you would try and encourage the person or work with the person and educate them to understand
Yeah.
why, why this group feels that it's important to preserve that.
Mhm.
And potentially maybe there's a different way to approach their project. I mean, maybe, maintaining the core of the structure, the side of the structure.
Yeah, if certain
is-
details are
And
too far
then,
off.
right, and then maybe a portion of the building is demolished and the back end is built up high. I mean, you have to look at each case individually.
Of course.
And what the person might want to do with it. But I think, there are, so many beautiful buildings in Kingston that I've seen, throughout the years, just like you said, demolition by neglect. People
Yeah.
just take these features off of them and they're gone forever
Yeah.
and you can't recreate them.
Yeah.
So I just would hate to see that continue to happen.
If you have a property, somebody owns a property and they sell it to a developer, doesn't that developer have to go through the planning board to get approval to put something there, or can they tear it down and then come to you? I'm trying to think if the planning,
Well, there's a demolition permit requirement.
so they have to justify, I mean, a developer is not gonna buy a property unless they know that they can demolish it.
Yeah,
Right.
most developers will enter into a contract and there'll be clauses in the contract to allow them to go through their due diligence and the review process
So does
before
planning
they close.
have the authority now to say, no, you can't tear that down, or not?
No, we really don't have
You
a lot of authority.
Okay,
No, that's,
so that would be,
yeah. No, and the only time that there's really a check is when it's in a historic district. It has to go to the Landmarks Commission to be reviewed first.
So it sounds like any project that needs demolition, planning board would have to refer to us, any project.
Not just in the historic district is what you're saying?
Yeah,
Well, I don't think you wanna just see every post
Right, right.
demolition, that's not what I'm thinking. I mean, I'm just thinking, or, buildings before, a certain date, constructed before a certain date, or if a building has, meets eligibility. I mean, we're undergoing right now an intensive level survey for Pekaki and for Wilbur. And then we're gonna find buildings that are eligible for listing in those neighborhoods. And those would, they're gonna be identified. And while the property owners may not want their property listed, we know that they are eligible, okay, because we've done that background work. And if they sell their property and the next person comes in and wants to apply for a demolition permit, right now, there's nothing to stop them from doing that.
but it's a.
But what I'm thinking about is that, do we want to put something in the code? I'm asking the commission, is that something you
Yeah, you hate to
want
lose some of those
to
Broadway buildings.
think about and put into the new code that just gives you the ability to review it first? I mean, the building may be so structurally deteriorated that it is not salvageable. I don't know, there's different cases.
If they could go 8 stories on Broadway, I could see, a block coming down.
Yeah.
Build-
what about Holiday Inn? I mean,
The 8 stories comes in when there's affordable housing in it, but they can do up to 6 right now.
So the age thing that you propose is kind of interesting, because I know to get through, what is it, SHPO and NPS, I think their cutoff is 50 years.
Yeah.
So what if we adopt that same sort of mentality?
Or it's more than 50 years.
If it's more than
Has
50
to come
years,
to us.
yeah, so, 2023, back it off by 50 years,
No, you just put 50.
No, that's what I mean, like, as we
Yeah,
age,
so
obviously,
that-
it's 50 years from whatever
Goes
the
forward.
current code is.
I mean, I mean, it's just a suggestion, we just, the topic has come up, it's been a concern of people. And, I don't know how to really address it other than doing something like that. And I think this group is probably, if you're talking about something having a historic value, this is the group that it should come to.
You may need a SHPO determination eligibility.
Why? No, it would be the local code element.
No,
We can't claim state responsibility here.
no, the state has to do it, that's what I'm saying.
We would have to force someone to get a demolition permit.
No, you contact the
SHPO
SHPO.
somehow?
No, you contact the SHPO to make a determination of eligibility. They do it all the time.
Oh,
I mean, in terms of age and the.
They'll come down,
Okay,
from
okay.
People's Island and have a look-see and then tell you. As you go through Pankaki, you'll see a number of them are not eligible. You look on the SHPO map, you see the little black square, that's like not eligible. There are some like that, so, yeah, they issue these letters, which I've gathered for Pankaki already. Took hold and filed them, just so you. So we're gonna go through that, but, yeah, we can't determine that it's eligible. SHPO has to do that, because I work in the National Park Service directly.
oh,
That's what I'm saying.
But you can be a local landmark without being.
Yeah, you can put the 50-year thing in, but then I think you want to call up whoever the SHPO rep is to replace Chelsea, whoever that is now, and have them make
It's
a
James
determination.
Carter
James Carter.
today.
Have James make a determination.
So that would be the point. If at 50 years, it automatically gets kicked over to us, then the whole SHPO thing can come in and it could be determined.
Yeah, it could be that, you could phrase it that way, yeah. So the 50 years triggers the SHPO review, and then SHPO reports back to us with a letter as to whether it's eligible or not. They have a form already for this. Property is eligible. Property is not eligible. It's that simple.
And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and I apologize before I ask this question, but so there's the local thing is when you designate a building is what? Is it designation or what is that? And then there's a state thing.
And a federal thing.
And so can Kingston, or can we designate
As a local.
locals?
Yes, there's a.
Yes,
in this-
We could designate it as something as a landmark, yeah. I think we can.
After the fact,
As a local landmark.
Right, but you
That's a different
obviously,
procedure, that's not what I'm talking about here, I'm talking
Yeah.
about getting, so you have a bank, if you're gonna take on a developer who's gonna bring an Article 78, if you tell them no, you wanna have the SHPO documentation in hand, I would think. You can check with Matt on that, but I would think,
But what triggers it? What would trigger the SHPO? Like,
you call them up.
but I
Tell
mean,
them
if it's a
matter.
private sale between, Mr. Smith and the big developer, when are we aware of this transaction? In order to,
Well, it might go to your office, or they might go for a demolition
Yeah.
permit straight down to Garrity Drive, in which case
Right.
they'll notify you or Kyla, and.
Right,
and
yeah,
then-
So the application,
yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
demolition
you can't
permit
just-
application.
yeah, you have to file a permit to do any demolition, so.
And they would do
And then
that before
that's-
they bought. I mean, if they were smart, you wouldn't buy a building. Planning this big project if you didn't know for sure.
they didn't.
No, they have a contingency that Sue was talking about, they put that in the that's standard. The developers put that in the contract, so they don't take title to a white elephant.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of something. I remember that Julie Edelson Safford was working on, and I don't know where that ended up before she left. I know she was talking about a database that was supposed to trigger the building department to talk to us if there were certain structures that needed work or something like that. And it was supposed to, I remember this, it was like right when I started with the commission, there was a structure that they were trying to do work, in-kind replacement or something like that. And then they got kicked to us because they got issued a stop work order. They didn't know that they needed to come see us to talk about their project. And I think there was a database that was supposed to be talking about what structures in the city of Kingston
I
that.
do know though that the building department is utilizing the municity software now. And that does have all the properties listed.
Yeah.
And they've been very good. They've been sending us a lot more.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's
Then
like the floodgates open.
Yeah.
And if they have a question on it, if they're not sure, they do call us and so they're aware now at all levels of their staffing. That was part of the problem.
Gotcha.
They, only a few of them knew. So they are aware of heritage area boundary and LWRP boundary and landmarks districts and the individual ones that might be scattered outside of those districts.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, they are checking.
Awesome.
Yeah, for example, it's 44 Crane Street, not eligible. I'd have to walk around the corner from my house and see why it's not eligible, but it's, if there's a letter issue. Go in here,
Not eligible.
section one, and then you get that letter.
I'm not sure what the question is that it's not eligible for.
I don't know, I'd have to go over to 44 Crane Street and look.
No, not the rationale. What would, not eligible for SHPO for tax credit
It
purposes?
would be eligible for tax credit purposes. It's not eligible for the NHR. Resource status determination, not eligible, contributing faults.
Okay, so it's not considered architecturally significant.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tear it
Sometimes these letters were issued, I looked at the dates that they were issued when the property was sold, like either the buyer's lawyer, most likely, contacted the SHPO directly. And say, can you give me
Really?
give me a letter that it says it's not eligible. There's quite a few of them in Pankaki. I mean, you'll have to walk around with Maria and then.
Yeah,
look at them.
because that would be surprising to me.
Yeah, I
It's a
can't think
number
of
of
a lawyer in town who does that. Suddenly.
Alright, so
Yeah, property being bought, that's why why this particular one on Crane Street, it says right on it.
and when was that recently?
It was in 2015.
Pretty recent.
They must have just dressed it up. Or not.
We have to walk over there and take a look. I'll give you a story next time.
But, so SHPO comes down, or does SHPO just do obviously SHPO made that determination.
I mean, I guess they could do a Google Street View, but I don't know. I think they have to come down.
Interesting.
And on the flip side of that, where that row of buildings on Beale Street near the Wilbur Trestle were all determined to be eligible. And they were going to be demolished at one point.
Right.
And I think Brad Will, when he was on the council, took that up as a cause, and we found the SHPO letters. There wasn't SHPO, it was DOT.
Yeah,
They were
They
gonna
hired Wally
realign,
Wheeler from,
Beale
yeah,
Street
he's a
there.
well-known historic
Yeah.
preservation person. Yeah, he,
Yep,
yeah, he
I remember
made
that.
the determination. And so his DOT had a preservation person, and they consulted him. And then it ended up in the SHPO file, so if you go back, you'll see those.
and some of those have been redone really well.
okay. Anything else? I mean, if you have anything else in the code, please let us know, those were,
I had one that just occurred to me about membership and the number of
Yeah.
members and the potential for alternates. We did not talk about that before this, but it's something that the planning board does, and sometimes it seems that there's a quorum issues that arise. So it might be a
right now,
consideration.
right now, this commission is a 7-member commission. You could stay at a 7-member commission and ask for 2 additional alternates. You can go to a 5-member commission and have more alternates if you'd like. Those are some options, but alternates are of value. Alternates are expected to attend all the meetings, just like regular members. They are able to participate in all discussions, just like all of the members. The only thing that they don't do is vote when the full membership is there. The way we do it with planning board, they fill in on a seniority basis if somebody is absent or recuses. So, and they've been proven invaluable to planning board. It's also a way for people to come into the commission and begin to learn the process, learn the regulations, get, brought up to speed on, various things. They get educated, at workshops, whatever, they have all the same opportunities. And so it's a way for them to it's a step in. And then when a full membership is open or vacated, then that's the pool that we look to elevate. So.
Yeah, I really would have welcomed alternates lots of
Well,
times.
now is the time.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah.
If it's, now's the time in that membership paragraph,
I would say up to 3,
add 3.
up to 3 alternates. I mean,
Would you leave it at 7? Leave your commission at 7?
I don't know.
Now, just as a reminder too, the Heritage Area Commission will be going away. So we're going to, we do have a couple of openings, so we're going to be talking to some of the Heritage members, seeing if they're interested in moving over. We have to look at
Yeah, I
resumes.
didn't know it was going away.
Huh?
I didn't know it was going away.
Well, Broadway overlay is going away.
That's very true. Yeah.
It'll be at T4, T5, Main Street thing.
It's who's taking the waterfront regulations.
Planning board,
Okay.
You guys made a determination on that?
yeah,
Okay.
that's what I've been told.
Okay.
Oh, seems logical.
Huh?
It seems logical to me. Yeah, they had at one point 11 members, which I think is unwieldy.
13.
13.
They had 13.
Yeah, I think that's unwieldy. It's not
no.
quite a grand jury, but it's close. And so,
on the section.
yeah, I think, anything from 5 to 9 is manageable. I'm happy at 7. I don't know if we want to nail them down to 7.
What's the time frame on eliminating heritage? Like, when this is all
Yeah,
passed,
well,
or-
when this is adopted, that will,
and the time frame on that is imminent?
you're probably looking at late summer. I mean, they're just starting the environmental process. So the DGIS review is being initiated now. So that's a big part of this as well. That's gonna take a couple of months at least.
Yeah, easy.
I would certainly welcome alternates, given that I wind up being in front of my office winds up being in front of the commission often. So not having to recuse myself or
Confusing.
bring in an alternate,
Yeah.
so I can recuse myself would be very beneficial, I think.
Yeah,
But do we have 7? We never had 7. Since I've been
Right now you have,
6.
right now the total is 7, but you only have 5.
right.
Right.
Two
There are
vacancies.
2 vacancies.
So we
And we have
move
2
some people
alternates.
over.
Yeah.
And we have-
Yeah.
Maybe it makes sense to do 5 and whatever, how many alternates? 5.
I'm okay with letting common council determine the number? So that how
I
that
think-
works?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I think you propose the change now. You, as the body, should be proposing the change. I would not leave it up to the council. I mean, they'll adopt this, and then that will be
Okay,
what it is. But I think, you'll recognize, we're recommending this change. If you want to stay at 7, you stay. We recommend that in addition to the 7 members that are identified in the code, we are asking that you add 2 alternates, whatever, 3 alternates. I think if you've got a 7-member commission, 2 alternates should be fine.
I think 7 is a good number to get a broad range of
Yes.
expertise on the board, which I've found through the years as members have come and gone. Each one brings a different perspective, and 7 is pretty good for someone new coming in, getting a feel for how things go and being able to contribute right away. 13 sounds horrific. 5, I think, is a little thin.
And I also think the perception by the public of us, small group of people, having that kind of authority, a bigger group is more, okay, this is more of a consensus than just 4 people.
Right, and you're only looking at a majority of, in a 5-member organization, a majority of 3.
Right.
Yeah, that, you could get some real anger, self-dealing kinds of
Yes.
arguments. with
The
it.
planning board is fine.
And I have heard those arguments. So-and-so has been best friends with that one since 7th grade, and so-and-so. Yeah, you get
I
that.
think, right.
In a town as small as Kingston, it's almost inevitable that you will have some connection with a bunch of the folks who show up in front of you. Better to have a slightly larger number.
Yeah, I think, obviously, if in recusing, obviously, like Andrea ends up recusing quite frequently because of the Dutton business, but, I think when you're looking at recusals, it's really, you have to understand that if you're financially gaining, yes, but if you know somebody, that's not a recusal reason. I mean, that would be crazy. If you have to, I think if you're joining a commission like this, you have to go into it with the understanding that you're going to act impartial and you're going to be, listening, and you're going to look at all of the aspects of a project. You're not going to go in with an agenda, so to speak.
One hopes.
Yeah.
But we don't control that for the future.
But if you
And
don't,
if I had
you
to
don't
pick
have
a-
like people work for the county, it doesn't necessarily mean that if the county comes in as an applicant, you have to recuse yourself if you work for the county.
Sure.
There's things like that, you feel you can act impartially and, and you should just move, you should participate.
I'll get a sense of the meeting. Is 7 sound, it's a number we've lived with for a long time.
5 or 7, I don't care. We've been living with 5 for a while, that's the only reason why I say 5 doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I understand your point. very much.
Especially since we could move some heritage people over that already have some.
Let's hope they want to come over.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Who's gonna have to work
You're
in
coming over.
All right, I put dibs on Mike Del Priore. I'll put the screws to him.
Well, you can
Best I
sell it
can.
Because we got rid of paint colors, we got rid of signs,
Yeah.
we don't have to do the SHPO thing twice, or whatever it is.
Go secret.
The secret thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Mark, sneaker.
Embarrassing but true.
Everybody hold up your sign, I'll hold up the S.
That looks like Latin.
Okay,
All right, anything
one
else?
Last question was, as the heritage is sunsetting, it might be a good idea to check, I think the woman, Erin Drost, the grant administrator. Check with her that you don't need a letter on the CFA from the heritage, the non-existent Heritage Commission. In which case, you may want to keep a board that meets once a year
Yeah,
and reviews the
well,
grants.
the Heritage
It's
Program,
just a letter, or this
the
board.
Heritage Program, yeah,
Be
basically,
designated,
yeah,
so
this,
the
this
heritage-
body will take over.
Right, but
whatever
that might be a
happens.
loose end that should be reviewed.
Yeah.
That's a good
Somebody
idea.
could say, they're still using the term heritage area, and they have a map, including a map of Kingston, but.
Yeah,
is
it's
that
really a
program
non-existent
No, it's-
program at
yeah,
the state
yeah.
level.
Right, except that Erin is still doing a grant that sometimes is called a heritage area grant as,
Okay.
as part of the CFA,
That's a good point.
so.
Okay,
One little nitpick in 264-6, a certificate of recommendation we don't do that. We've never recommended anything.
which one?
264-6.
Oh, you're in this thing.
Yeah, no, next door, it's the old Stockade District one. It has this weird terminology. This should die. Please, let it die.
Yeah, because now it's preservation.
Yes, we only do preservation notices of action at this stage of the game.
Actually, there was one other term that I saw, it was a preservation permit. That's another one I saw written.
I think Schenectady uses that,
Yeah.
and it would be fine, with me.
Yeah, I guess it's I think both things mean the same thing, so.
I think the
Well,
notice of action means we
it's-
can deny more easily.
well, in here it says preservation permit is the title, but that says preservation notice of action in the language. Is that what you're talking about here?
Yeah, let's,
So I think that's fine, the way it is.
Okay.
yeah, please though, kill that.
Which one?
264-6, a certificate of recommendation. It isn't part of the zoning code, it's running parallel, or it historically predates, and no one has ever said it's been
So that should be
superseded.
preservation notice of action.
Yeah, or deleted in its entirety. I don't think it would make a huge difference. Either, this whole section maybe should die and be superseded by the new code.
I was gonna say, isn't a good chunk of it actually brought into the new code? It's just-
Absolutely.
It's all considered a part of the one section.
Exactly, so perhaps it should be deleted or superseded
Oh, I get.
with some
okay, I follow what you're saying.
formality in
Yeah.
this process. Because it's
Otherwise it's redundant.
logically redundant and inconsistent.
Okay,
Yeah, I think
well,
that
just
was part of
double
the
check,
comment I
read it
had.
through it and make sure that you want us to recommend delete or supersede.
Okay.
Because that's a very broad stroke. It's gone. Just saying.
Maybe change the language?
Or have it be totally subsumed by. I don't mind, most of this has gotten carried over, but that section in particular has been rendered meaningless.
Okay. But as part of your recommendation, this would be an aside, because this is not what they're looking at, not what they're doing the environmental review on, but this would get put on that list. And if this is automatically going to be covered by this, then that's a good recommendation. Yeah, and I think that's a simple one.
And it would make any decision in the Stockade District more defensible from a lawyer's perspective. You've got two competing sections in this.
Somebody would find out.
I've been waiting for that.
Yet?
I've been waiting for it to happen for 20 years, but yeah,
It was in their litigation. They pointed to that section,
I'm not surprised.
but that's okay. We covered ourselves.
Yay, well done, well done. kudos to Dan Gartenstein, he will be thrilled if it dies.
I had a weird observation, on section 8, little II.
In the proposed?
Yes. That section where it says the Stockade area district of Kingston, et cetera, it reads really beautifully. But I don't know why it exists, given that the other districts are just saying the Rondout Landmark District consisting of the area, et cetera. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty, and I love the
It is
quick
pretty.
historic blurb
Yes.
about it.
Especially the burning of.
But if we're gonna, it's either don't put all of that, then just call it the Stockade District consisting of the area shown, et cetera, or add a nice blurb about each of the other ones. It just seems kind of random.
I like having it,
I do
quite
too.
honestly. I think,
I'd love to know more about the
it
other
gives, you know,
districts.
if you're not familiar with Kingston and you're coming in and you're looking at the code, it gives you a sense of place.
It is the crown
Right.
jewel.
You know,
It is. It is the crown jewel.
I would almost want more written about the other items.
I would agree, that's a good, you wanna do it?
I was gonna suggest.
I'm not the person to do it.
Ooh, that would be
That
bad.
looks like they.
I nominate Kevin.
Or, what am I looking at?
Just say yes.
And there's probably something right in the
The nomination.
the
Well,
nominations.
yeah, Ron down Chestnut Street, yeah, you can do that.
that
Fair Street, I think we determined that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, that's a local,
And all they have is a map. There might be something in that.
I don't know
that-
that the
that
legislation,
That original legislation,
which we have,
yeah, not sure, there's a,
I don't know that there's there's gotta be something in there that,
yeah, maybe,
I'm
I'll
looking
look
at-
that up and see.
yeah,
if-
the adopting legislation might
Yeah.
have a paragraph in a whereas.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think it was a description of housing styles.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so you want me to?
Work up a real quick blurb for each of them.
Just a quickie.
Yeah, very. Like, as long as the Stockade area district is.
You'll leave us, okay, it looks like they took that out of 264.
Yeah,
yeah,
they did.
Or close to it with, you know, maybe some commas and then different places.
Yeah.
I have a question about section 10. Under, almost down at the bottom where it says all decisions of the commission, double I under D. At the end, it says the preservation notice shall be valid for 1 year. At all times, the preservation notice shall be prominently posted in public view pursuant to local law governing building permit postings. I'm not sure anyone has ever done that.
I speak out as question have.
Yeah.
I would give them the preservation,
What we give them is a letter,
right,
and we don't give them like a, which
Oh,
is
permit.
might be why it says permit, that's
Yeah,
what got me looking at
that's a
that.
good question.
If you do want that, then we should create a permit that they should post in their window.
well,
No,
the
that's really
application
necessary.
has something like that in it.
I mean, I don't know if that matters, and then underneath that, the inspection section, it says, if upon inspection, the Historic Landmarks Commission determines that work is not in conformity, I don't know that HLPC
I had that same
ever
exact question.
inspect.
Yeah, and how would we do that if not for the building department? If they know that so to that end, I agree. I don't know that we need to post something that says that a preservation notice of action was issued. But yeah, how would the building department know that they're, they would have to enforce basically for us, saying that, yes, all the work
Yeah, I
is
mean,
carried out as described.
typically, the only way we know is when someone calls and tells
Or we
us
get a
that something's
complaint.
going on, and
It's more
then we
negative.
send the building department to go and look. But I'm not sure if you want that in there or changed or,
I think it's valid if we're going through the review process to have somebody do all of that work, then hopefully, and actually that, to that end, the National Park Service, they do the part 1, part 2, and part 3. The part 3 is them checking up to make sure you've done the work as described in the part 2 submission process. So they go through, they take pictures like the whole 9 yards, and if you haven't done it the way that you described it in your drawings, you don't get the tax credits. Or you have to go back and amend it with them, and that can be a hell of a process. So to that end, what's our purpose otherwise if we don't
Right.
follow up with it?
Right.
Not that I want to get into strong arming people and saying, you didn't put the brick in right, but to that end.
I can think of only one time when we actually did this. This is before we were tied in, when we were the redheaded stepchild of the city.
Hey, hey, hey. I laugh at that joke all the time.
All right, it's okay. I stand ruddy faced. And what happened was we discovered that they were sandblasting brick down on down on what's now Old Savannah. And I wound up calling an emergency meeting, posting signs around town myself, getting yelled at by Mayor Satile, and putting an emergency stop work order that the building department backed me up on. And the board voted, we had a meeting at Ulster Savings Bank for some reason. And
Secret meetings, huh?
we did all sorts of things before you got it. Yeah.
What stays in what happens
Well-
in HLPC stays in HLPC.
No, it didn't in this case. It got splashed across the papers. It was a major scandal. I got screamed at for at least 2 straight days and finally got overruled by Common Council. But for a while there, the HLPC stopped construction and the building department forced them to agree to put a sealant back on the outside. Sandblasting the inside, we didn't have a problem with. When they went outside, someone, I've forgotten who filed the complaint, and I was chair at that time, so it kind of fell to me. This is maybe 20 years ago.
I remember the issue, I don't remember who complained or how it got
Is that
there.
you? Did you see it and you put?
I
it
did
together?
not,
Somebody came to you?
I think it was another member of HLPC who lived nearby realized what was going on. I'm thinking maybe it was Bob Carey, because he would have known Rick immediately, this is a terrible thing to do.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and so we had this meeting that was going to be about windows, I think, at Ulster Savings Bank. And so I added that on 4 places around town. We voted and building department backed us up on it.
Okay.
I mean, it's really, that's the only time I can remember that happening. I don't know if we want to, I think maintaining that to ourselves as like an emergency
Well, I mean, I
measure.
think, I would leave it in. I don't think there's any harm in leaving it in. It says if upon inspection. I mean, it's not mandating inspections, but I think I would leave it in because if we do get a complaint, we do respond. And so, if something is going on, work is starting, or work, we approve a project and work starts and people say, hey, I don't think that's what you approved. We'll look at it. And I mean, so I would say, yeah, leave it in. I mean, that would be my opinion. I don't see there's a harm in leaving it in. As for posting, I mean, we can look at, I don't know, they post the building permit.
Yeah.
The building permit is only issued after the PNA is issued and it's part of the building permit issuance. So could you construe that as being part of? Yeah, it's not a separate document posted there.
I don't
Not
see
that
it
that's-
to it.
I don't think it's necessary.
You get little oval shaped.
Yeah, exactly.
With our logo.
You look so official.
Honey
Seal of
Rubber's like that too.
Pardon?
Honey Rubber's like that too, wasn't it?
Ooh, yes, we got a
Yeah,
complaint.
they had something approved, right? I don't think
Yeah,
it
the
was on there,
doors.
or it's brand new if it was on.
Yeah,
The doors were,
Yeah,
good point. Yep, I forgot that.
yeah. That's why we have that long-winded preservation notice of action.
Yep,
Uh-huh.
and it does not obviate the need.
Anything else? Have you seen anything? Your review?
No, I mean, I'm not sure, yeah. Nothing stood out to me.
All right, well, I mean, I think we've made some good headway. It's, obviously, if you see anything further, if you look at other sections that you wanna, talk about, maybe we can talk about this at our next commission meeting, or do you feel you need another workshop? Let us know.
I have one other silly one. And then I'm back. I don't wanna keep us here any longer.
No, where are you?
8B, little, 2I, or II,
Yeah,
number 4, maintenance. It's on page 8.27.
Yep.
So with regard to maintenance, so preventive maintenance is required in order to ensure that these building space elements and details are preserved. Failure to provide this preventive maintenance shall be a violation of this article. I cannot explain how many people are probably out of compliance with this. So I don't want to get that persnickety about people not scraping a handrail and then repainting it every 2 years.
Yeah.
I would think that the language would want to read more like if it's a hazard, as opposed to just,
Or
you didn't-
deliberate neglect, to maybe
Yeah,
beat
that is-
that up,
Well, you
Yeah,
have
to,
that,
to encompass that, what we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
let it go to hell and then sell it and
Sure.
scrape it, yeah.
All right, so how would you then look at rewording that? The first sentence, I think, obviously would stay.
Yeah,
So the second sentence, we would replace with or change how.
I like your deliberate neglect. I think that makes more sense. Deliberate neglect,
It's a no-no. Don't do it.
Oh, I prefer thou shalt.
Deliberate neglect or, lack of maintenance that, is indicative of a hazard, shall be in
Yeah, maybe
violation of
both
this
of
article.
those.
And or, yeah. Otherwise, and obviously that's not anything anybody's enforcing, like, if you didn't paint your stairs and they're flaking, like, really?
But if your roof caves in.
Yeah, if your roof caves in, sure.
Just a hazard or safety hazard, or just hazard?
Well, that's a building permit, a building
Yeah, with,
safety issue even beyond us. We're kind
Sure.
of looking at, you're letting the details of a Victorian just rot away.
and that I would construe as deliberate neglect, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, and or. in that.
Right.
So deliberate neglect and or
A
lack
safety
of
hazard.
preventive maintenance
Causing a
that
safety hazard.
presents a hazard shall be a violation.
I think that makes more sense.
So what's the next step with this? The changes we've discussed, will get sent out to us to review again? And then-
Yeah, we'll kind of put the synopsis together. If we'll do those follow-ups, that we said we would do with CLG with Aaron Drost. If you want to look up the language for those blurbs, we'll pull that together.
We'll review signage for the next
You
one.
guys, yeah.
you might want to review, because the story on Broadway seemed to come maybe as a surprise to some. You might want to review the architectural standards section. Talk about window size, relationship, all the, details that are, there's a pretty good section on architectural standards, which would come into play.
Yeah, I only keyed in on like a couple of these when I was reviewing it. So there's a lot of info. It's very dense, but in a good way.
Do you want to look at another workshop session or try and do this at a regular meeting?
I would tend toward a regular meeting. I would imagine circulating your rough draft and then at a regular meeting, setting a bit of time aside to plow through, make any amendments and approve and ask you to submit. Does that sound
So you took
sensible?
one more step and then.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to look at the other sections, so that's what I'm saying, those other sections could be another discussion like this. The architectural standards and the signage,
Hmm.
they're not, yeah.
A separate workshop. So do we want to get this squared away and put to bed and then get into the next ones, or?
I would start,
Do it now.
because you're gonna have
I think
to
we
put one
get one-
recommendation.
Yeah,
You
we get one letter response and then we're done. So we need to,
But just on this section, right? That we're only we're gonna review the other because it's relevant to us, not that we have the
Right, but
authority,
there-
do we?
well, we do, we
Yeah,
have
you
the
do.
authority
The whole
to,
code
if we
is
think it
open to you.
impacts what we have to
Okay.
do.
Okay,
It's in our purview to say, hey, this doesn't make sense to what we have to review, or what you put forward is never gonna work on a stone colonial building, and we think that's hugely important, say something.
okay. Then, yeah, we definitely do that.
All right, so do we want to do that individually with, relying on you sending us a link or two, or do we want to sit down and mull it over as a group?
I think talking as a group is
This has been very
much
productive.
more sensible because you get the benefit of everybody just back and forth
Yeah.
discussion. I
It's
think
not
it's,
formal.
Yeah,
that's my feeling. I mean, I think you make a lot more headway doing it this way.
so what's our time frame to try and review and get back together?
I don't know if you have, planning board has it has a time frame, but I've already talked to them about extending, so that's not an issue. I'm not worried about that right now. Obviously, you're not gonna be sitting on it for 6 months. I mean, I'm not talking about that. You're moving forward. I think we show that we're moving forward and progressing, the discussion to a point where we feel comfortable making a formal recommendation, within another month, you should have everything buttoned up.
So perhaps we should have another regular meeting and then a workshop. I think that will give us time to pour over, maybe ask a question or two.
Well, your next regular meeting is
It's March,
yeah,
March 2nd.
March 2nd, so
sometime later in March. We would have
maybe the
a
week
second.
after that meeting.
Yeah, week or two, something like that. And then we can shuffle it all together and approve it at the April meeting. Seem rational? That's what I see as a sense of the meeting. Do we need a formal vote?
No.
Okay.
So the time frame for the common council doesn't apply to us.
No, we're
Yeah.
not.
No, they're,
As
Yeah,
we're,
they're
we're
doing their
involved.
own workshops, so they're
Yeah.
gonna be delaying
I think they have a close of comment there next week.
right, but that doesn't include, that's not this group. We
Right. We have a statutory
That's
requirement,
involved.
so we want to be very deliberate, and as quickly as we can manage.
Okay, so we'll be looking at the signage section. We'll send out a note, signage, architectural standards.
Those are the two that come to my mind. Are there others that you can think of, Kyla? You're familiar with this.
No, those are the two that jump out, but.
Okay, well, if something
the more we
else.
look, the more we see.
It's cruel that way.
It is.
So if you see something that you think needs to be included, give us a link. Really, what's one more?
Well, that's what happened at CAC. We did it, we got it done on time, we're like congratulating ourselves and we look at it and, oh no, what did we miss?
Are there sections that jump out at you from what you were reading at CAC?
No, I mean, just, 264, just consistency, just making things consistent, basically.
Yes, so that's a good point. Review that 264, because if you want to make the recommendation to delete it in its entirety, then you want to make sure you're making the correct recommendation.
Right, we're not leaving out something important.
Yeah.
Well, I think just looking at the criteria and then looking at the criteria over here, see if there's something here that belongs in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
It's not-
seem to have carried over most of it, but you're right, I haven't done a fine tooth comb kind of checking.
Yeah,
over.
gotta highlight, highlight
Yeah.
everything.
It's true. After a while, which eye is reading what?
And don't
Okay.
come at me.
Anything else? Anybody? Okay.
All right, we stand adjourned.